Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have here a really nice book, Veils of Darkness, Rays of Light. A book on spirituality written by Shaykh Tameem Ahmadi, who is the spiritual descendant and disciple of the very famous Shaykh Hakim Akhtar, rahimahullah, was the spiritual descendant of Shaykh Ashraf Ali Thanwi, rahimahumullah ta'ala. So this book here is really interesting. It talks about, as the title suggests, veils of darkness, meaning aspects of sin, the harms of sin, different advices of great shuyukh in the past, as well as the rays of light, meaning the first focus of the book is to remove the effect of sin, understanding what sin is, then how to remove sin from our lives. And then the second part of the book are the rays of light, meaning dhikr, ibadah, turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how all of these help us get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So actually the book is kind of a manifestation of the Sufi maxim of التخلية قبل التحلية. So this is a statement that many make. تخلية, removal, before tahliya, before adornment. So in a person's spiritual journey, the focus should be on removal of the negative effect of sin before worrying about excessive adornment through acts of worship, etc. And that would be the ideal methodology that a person goes through, that they focus on removing the harm from their life, and that takes precedent over engaging in a lot of worship. Oftentimes we find ourselves where we are doing a lot of acts of worship but not really seeing the fruits. That may be because we're not actively focused on removing the negative effect of sin. So Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, in one of his books, he compares this situation to building a very beautiful palace on top of dung and manure and excrement. So, of course, that excrement, dung, manure, waste is not going to be a very strong foundation. Whatever you build on top of it's going to collapse, even if you might have the best materials there is. But that foundation is spoiled and it's rotten. It does not serve as a good foundation. You need something solid. That foundation is the removal of sin. Then you can build very beautifully on top of that. So that's the whole gist of it. Veils of darkness, what they are, how to remove them. Rays of light, how to get that. Now, the purpose of this is not to, do a book review here. I wanted to share a letter that is in the appendix. So appendix number 1, a letter from one seeking advice. So this seems to be a letter from a disciple of Shaykh Tameem, the author, and the answer of Shaykh Tameem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, give him good health, wealth, afiyah, khair in dunya and akhirah, and accept his works. So I'm just going to read through, inshallah, wherever I feel appropriate, I'll make some comments here and there. This is very pertinent and it applies to many of us in today's time. Now, it applies to men and women. However, this is a male murīd, so he's going to be talking about attraction towards females. But it can work the other way around. But in general, males really struggle, men really struggle with this, especially in Islam, where we are commanded to lower our gaze. So here is a remedy for that. First, let's take a look at the letter of the disciple explaining his condition and the response of the sheikh. This also lets us understand how the relationship between the protege and the mentor works in the field of tasawwuf. I don't have to explain much. You just can hone in on this, that this is the relationship of the sheikh and the murīd. And this is what it's all about. It's basically a spiritual mentor. He says here, a disciple, meaning a murīd, complains to his sheikh in a letter. He says, whenever I do my dhikr, my daily remembrances, layer after layer of filthy, lustful thoughts keep arising from my subconscious mind. So he's unable to focus on his dhikr because of lustful thoughts. Sometimes they're so strong that I'm bewildered as to how to stop them. I am not firmly established in suluk, in the path of Allah, getting close to Allah, nor in taqwa and piety. So he's not at the end of the path, he's more on the beginning side of the path. The old habits of lust and evil thoughts still lurk within me. Lust is troubling me excessively. So this, from so far, you can see that the murid has done tawbah. He has gotten a mentor in the path, but his previous habits and previous, his ways is affecting him still in his dhikr. The very thought of women excites me and arouses my lustful desires. My mind is so sensitive that I'm not able to hear their voice nor even think of them. So if he hears a feminine voice even, or even a thought of a woman comes in his mind, it really affects him. He cannot focus on his ibadah, he cannot focus on getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's continuously troubling him. As soon as the mere thought of a woman comes to the mind, my dhikr is disturbed, and the peace of the whole day is spoiled. So just a single thought of a woman will ruin his entire day. Remember, this is an individual who is not trying to look at women, not trying to do any kind of haram, etc. So the thought of a woman, because he's trying to stay away, is very powerful in his mind, and it ruins his day. I advise my mind, coax it, frighten it, but it is of no avail. My mind revolts. I do not know how to control this passion. Irritability, selfishness, anger, greed, hatred, and attachment are still lurking within me. However, lust is my main enemy, and a very strong one too. I'm completely lost. Please advise me as to how to overcome this. So this is the state of the murid, and this is the relationship between the murid and the shaykh. The murid's responsibility is to tell the shaykh their condition, what they need, what they're facing, and the shaykh will respond thereafter. So here is the response. It's a lengthy response, a very apt one, and one that we can all learn from, especially in today's time. He states, in your dhikr, when filthy thoughts emerge from the lower self, your nafs, and come to the surface of the conscious mind with formidable force, do not try to resist. Instead, continue to repeat La ilaha illallah vigorously and audibly, thinking of nothing else. Every time your mind drifts away, bring it back to your dhikr. Continue to do this over and over again. Let your mind follow the sound of La ilaha illallah. Insha'Allah, the mind will eventually let go of the stray thoughts and center on the dhikr. So the first advice is, these thoughts are going to come. Your duty is not to fight the thoughts necessarily. It is to focus on the dhikr. So just keep on thinking of it. And that is the benefit of audible dhikr. When you say La ilaha illallah, the ears are engaged, the mind can easily perceive it. So your focus should be on trying to hear yourself making the dhikr and ponder over its meanings. That will automatically distract the mind away from the shahawat. Secondly, understand that the main cause of unmanageable lustful thoughts is the constant bombardment of sensual images upon the heart. So he's attacking it at the core. This is where it comes from. This is what we are struggling with, especially in today's time. Due to living in a hypersexualized society, we are constantly being exposed to sexually explicit images and sights. To counter this, do not go to mixed gatherings, crowded areas, or places where you will be exposed to lustful sights, except out of necessity. So one thing that a person has to do in order to combat this, because it's rampant in society, you can't even go and drive to the masjid without seeing someone, a woman who is barely scantily dressed, jogging, etc. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do. We Our job is to lower the gaze. He says, don't go to these areas. Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to be exposed to that. Do not go near social media. It is rampant with shameless and pornographic images. So here, social media, when he's saying pornographic images, in Islam, a woman's anything that is part of her awra, her private area, that is considered something that we cannot look at. That includes hair, that includes the neck, that includes the clavicle, the chest area, the stomach, all of these things. It's just the face, the hands, the feet, and that's all. And even then, a person is advised not to look at the face. You know, women have a natural beauty to them. As you can see, this individual is just greatly troubled by these thoughts. He says here, our beloved Shaykh Mawlana Hakim Akhtar, rahimahullah, used to say, fight the battle of lust at the gateway of the eyes. So where you fight lust is at the eyes. Don't fight it when it's in the heart. It's too late. You have to fight here. If you do this, the heart will remain safe and you will not be tormented by lustful desires. But if you do not guard the gateway of the eyes, allowing lustful sights to enter the heart, it becomes very difficult to fight the lust once it has infiltrated your inner being. So the focus should be more on, guarding what comes in the eyes, not guarding what comes in the heart. That's the secondary stage. Once it has infiltrated the eyes, it's going to go to the heart. It may become too late once it, festers and it develops there. So that was the second point that the Shaykh made. Stay away from avenues of these lustful images. Thirdly, make a commitment to yourself in the morning that you will not cast any lustful glances intentionally or conjure up sexual fantasies. Strive with your heart and soul to ensure that you do not see any lustful images, nor think any lustful thoughts, nor engage in any talk or discussion of this nature. So every single morning, have a self-talk. And part of that self-talk is to tell yourself, I'm not going to think, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to engage in any kind of lustful thoughts. And you make this strong, firm resolve. Vehemently avoid anything or anyone that will incite and stimulate your sexual desires. Delete all apps, social media outlets, and other avenues by which you are exposed to sexual images. This is mujahada. This is striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is jihad of the lower self. How many of us can say that we can delete our apps? And if you do so, this is for the sake of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Consider them to be the destroyers of your connection with Allah and something that darkens your spiritual light. Do this for 3 days. Then continue on this path for 1 week. Then gradually up to 2 weeks. And finally strive to complete 40 days of chastity, iffa, and spiritual purity. So he's given a slow track. Try your best. Like the goal is not to, after 3 days, indulge, but aim for a low number that you can handle. 3 days, delete the apps, complete, the mind focused on chastity. Do this for 3 days. Then you extend your period of time. It doesn't mean after 3 days now indulge and then do another week. It means that the mental goal that you are reaching is very close and easier to reach. If you can complete a full 40-day period of avoiding all pornographic images, deliberate lustful thinking, and fantasizing, a renewed spiritual energy and peace will generate from within. So 40 days, the magic number. 40 days of no thinking, no looking, no interaction with sexual images, you'll become a new individual. A spiritual enlightenment, nuraniyah, will develop within you. There's this spiritual nur that will come within us. You'll begin to enjoy your dhikr, and you'll feel an amazing pleasure in your worship and acts of devotion. You will have attained a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If in this period a sudden fleeting thought arises but is immediately dispelled, there's no harm. So sudden thoughts that come and then quickly go away and not entertained by you, it just comes and goes, that's not going to be harmful. What should be avoided is intentionally conjuring lustful thoughts. That's the harmful thing here. Processing, pondering, turning it over in the mind, manipulating the thoughts, developing, those things are going to be harmful. Furthermore, and look at the beautiful advice, do not beat yourself up by dwelling too much on your mistakes, defects, or evil qualities. So this is really important. Our self-esteem is really important. Don't beat yourself up. Do not allow shaitan to drag you into despair by constantly reminding you of your sins. Every time he reminds you of your sins, trying to make you abandon this path, remind yourself of the ocean of Allah's infinite mercy, such an ocean that dissolves every impurity, sin, and defect when it engulfs a person. Do not allow shaitan to make you say, I am so filthy, I am dirty, I am not fit to worship Allah, I am not worthy of this path. So really important for anyone going in the spiritual path to have self-esteem, to not feel like I am the lowest of the low, to not beat oneself up. Oftentimes we think the way to get to Allah is to beat myself up, to say I'm disgusting and I'm a horrible thing and I deserve to be destroyed. That thought process itself will cause us to despair and shaitan becomes happy. That's his goal. This is counterproductive and makes a person go backwards on this path. So the path of tasawwuf is not a path of blaming oneself. It's actually the path of enlightenment, becoming happy with one's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing istighfar and tawbah, but also being positive. It gives shaitan the opportunity to bring you down and make you hopeless. Also, do not attempt to aggressively fight lustful thoughts or engage them. Don't try to actively engage in fighting the thoughts. When lustful thoughts overwhelm you, think of them to be like the high tides and low tides of the ocean. When the feeling of lust comes about, turn your attention elsewhere. Busy yourself with good activities and occupy your mind with healthy thoughts and distractions. So when the wave of lustful thoughts comes, you need to ride that wave and go to the lower side. Busy yourself with something else. Don't engage with that thought. That thought is very powerful. It's going to swell over you. You busy yourself with something else and distract the mind. You will notice after some time that, like the tide of the ocean, the lust will have receded and returned to its low tide. So subhanAllah, I had the opportunity of going to the, I believe it was the ocean, the ocean in England a few months back. And high tide, it just completely engulfs the entire beach. Like where you were standing and you set up, your umbrella, etc. It completely gets engulfed. But then when it's low tide, it just moves so far back. So similarly, these are waves of shahawat, of desires, just going to come over you. You, at that time, just move back. Move back, think about something else, busy yourself elsewhere. Then it's going to move back, the tide is going to go back, and then now you have your place again. That portion of your mind is free again. A very beautiful analogy. If the feelings of lustful passion overwhelm you, then it is sufficient for you to work on this defect at a separate juncture by reflecting on its remedies while in solitude. Do not try to directly attack these evil qualities in the moment, otherwise they will attack you even more. Just focus on developing your positive virtues, focus on attaining purity, and that is done by doing what we have mentioned above. So he's saying in the heat of the moment, when you have lustful thoughts, don't try to attack those thoughts. Busy yourself with something else. Then when the tide has gone back and you have space in your mind again, now start thinking about, okay, why did I have those lustful thoughts? What can I do? What are the remedies? That's when you go into the psychological analysis of what's happening. Not in the heat of the moment. You're going to get overwhelmed. At the heat of the moment, you need to distract yourself. And one thing he was saying, doing the dhikr of la ilaha illallah, engaging in some work, going out, doing something, obviously protecting the eyes when you do so, exercising. Do not worry yourself by constantly thinking, I have so many defects and weaknesses. So he's reiterating that point. The productive method of rectifying these evil traits is to counter them by cultivating luminous Nurani virtues. Do the opposite of their demands. For example, if the lower desires demand you to be jealous and backbite someone, oppose this by making dua for that person and speaking good of them. If the lower desires demand you to be stingy, then spend some amount in charity. If the lower desires demand you to conjure lustful thoughts, involve yourself in acts and thoughts of purity. Purity in action is manifested in optional worship, dhikr, beneficial work, feeding and serving the poor, visiting the sick, caring for one's parents, and being extra dutiful to them. So he's saying here, the key to combating certain things, when you're in a state of equilibrium and you're not being attacked by the lusts, is to engage in the opposite. If you hate someone, if you're jealous of someone's qualities, the nafs wants you to backbite. You use your mind in the state of equilibrium when you're normal, and you say, I'm going to make dua for that person. The nafs hates it, but eventually that quality of jealousy will go away. He says, similarly, what is the opposite of lustful desires and lustful shahwat and acts? It is acts of purity. What is more pure than the name of Allah? What is more pure than salah, doing good acts, etc.? So when we are back to normal, you engage in these kind of things and it will automatically defeat those thoughts. You don't have to directly engage in them. Because these thoughts are like poisonous. As soon as you engage in it, it starts attacking you. So you can't really touch those thoughts. You need to go at them indirectly. Do the opposite, and those thoughts will diminish. When performing these pure spiritual acts, meaning acts of ibadah, one should intend attaining purity of the heart. So when we do these acts of dhikr, tilawa, helping the poor, etc., make the intention that I want to purify my heart. Ask Allah, O my beloved Allah, through the blessing of these righteous acts, purify my heart, subdue my uncontrollable desires, and enlighten my heart with your light. Verily, your light dispels all darkness and evil. Then he continues, idleness is the root cause of many sins and bad habits. So another advice, don't be idle. Busy yourself with stuff. When you're sitting around, these thoughts are going to attack you. Keep yourself busy with mental and spiritual exertion. Physical exercise and hard work is also extremely beneficial to get your mind off stray thoughts. The mind cannot be occupied with two activities at once. So lifting weights, cardiovascular exercise is going to make you healthy. You're going to feel better, look better. Your mind is going to be better. And you don't have time to think about these things. Finally, the greatest means of attaining purity is by asking Allah's help through dua for purity, chastity, and protection. So the main weapon, dua. Along with this, be persistent in audible dhikr, the constant development of positive qualities, spending time in reflection, and being in the auspicious company of the Shaykh. So all of these great things, engage in dhikr, think about it, and he says audible dhikr. Audible dhikr, saying La ilaha illallah out loud, helps you because, as I mentioned before, you're able to think about it more clear. None of this can be achieved without using one's willpower and determination. So it all comes to your own will. How much do you want it? How much are you going to exert yourself? Through this powerful spiritual regimen, all of these things that he mentioned here, all these negative qualities will die off by themselves with the help of Allah. This is the best method, and only with Allah's enablement, tawfiq, can this be achieved. Some may inquire, why not just get married and solve the problem once and for all? Simple solution. To this we respond, marriage is definitely the greatest cure to lustful inclinations. Undoubtedly, it is a prophetic remedy and will definitely help in guarding the eyes in one's chastity. However, lust as a spiritual disease, once taken root, cannot be remedied so easily, even through marriage. So he's saying, even if someone does get married, if lust has taken a deep-seated root in the heart, marriage itself is not even going to help. because it's become so cancerous. It's affected the mind, the heart. Marriage is only helping partially, but the spiritual disease is still there. This is why we have observed that many young people, despite getting married in order to remedy their lustful desire, cannot curb their passions. They got married, they're still having these lustful desires because they have failed to address the problem at its source, deep rooted in their heart and inner being. Hence, the need for the above mentioned courses of action. The lowly slave of Allah, Tameem Ahmadi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him and allow the Ummah to continuously benefit from him. I'm going to summarize what the Shaykh has mentioned here. The whole thing is lustful desires and how it affects a person's mind and bars them from ibadah. The first advice that the Shaykh gives is continuously recite La ilaha illallah audibly. And this will help one and focus on that and don't directly focus on the lustful desires. The second thing is stop the lustful desires at their root. Find out what things are causing you to look at images of the opposite gender, pornographic images, sexually explicit images, whatever apps you have, whatever gatherings you're going to, and decrease that as much as possible. He quotes his sheikh as saying that you have to fight the desires at the source of the eyes, not when it reaches the heart. Once it reaches the heart, it's deeply embedded. To combat that, you do the rest of the things that he mentioned, but from now on, you have to protect the gaze. Number 3, have a self-talk every morning and really stress to yourself that today I am not going to do any kind of haram. I'm not going to look at haram. I'm not going to think it. I'm not going to interact with it. He says, do this, make a goal of 3 days, then make a goal for a week, then make a goal for, if you can do it for 40 days straight, he says you're going to go through a complete transformation. So this should be a goal for everyone. The fourth thing, don't beat yourself up. Don't speak bad to yourself inside. Encourage yourself, improve yourself, make yourself feel good. However, not complacent. The next thing, don't try to fight the lustful thoughts. They will overcome you. They'll overtake you. Don't ponder over them. Then he says, do the opposite. Lustful thoughts, when you are you have the capability of thinking properly, do the opposite of them. Engage in good acts, righteous and chaste acts that will combat the lustful aspects. And the last, or the second to last, don't be idle. Spend your time in khair, spend your time in doing those things that is beneficial. Do some exercise, improve the mind, go to school, do better at work, read books, learn about Islam. There's so many things that we can engage in instead of wasting our time. And finally, make dua. Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the steps that the Shaykh mentioned, extremely beneficial information. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me and you and everyone tawfiq to control our desires, control the gaze, protect our hearts from evil thoughts, and allow us to engage in ibadah with focus, devotion, sincerity, and ultimately earn His pleasure. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.